Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Season 5, Episode 9 of The Masked Singer. You know what? I completely and otherwise avoid watching any of these sing-alongs anymore. I honestly do not care about those. I think reasonably they need to figure out how to make that episode much more watchable, to be brutally honest. Uh, really, also, I am just having a really difficult time just actually enjoying this season, in all brutal honesty. I really feel like this season, more than others, has kind of been a little bit more rigged. And on top of that, I also kind of feel like the performances have kind of really dipped into quality compared to like the previous season, where we had these like big, cool, great singers where we're like, man, this is amazing. Like, we in this entire season, I don't feel have had one performance yet that has been like, oh my god, this is the best performance we have ever had. Like, if anything, there have been some performances, probably coming from this guy, that would probably be saying, like, well, this is the best performance of this season, but not ever. So, really, for me, I'm just kind of unenthused about this show. Like, to me, I could say maybe the Russian dolls do kind of get me interested or intrigued about this show, because I actually tend to week from week enjoy their performances. But also, I've been enjoying whenever I can see the Yeti as well. But like, to me overall, like, the quality of just performances have really dipped. Um, I'm just very unimpressed, and I'm also just kind of very just going like, yeah, like, this show is just not to where I would say like I'm just enthused about it. Really, I'm not saying everybody needs to all of a sudden start singing Whitney Houston songs and belting out things and like trying to shake the world up with their performances. No, like, I would just rather just see somebody giving us a like, oh, hey, this is the best performance that we've ever had in this season. Quality, not just like, oh, okay, well, they're just here, and like, because maybe some people would feel differently. Some people would probably say, oh no, like, Black Swan has been really good this year. I'm like, I guess, but like, to me, I'm not jazzed about this season. I'm not jazzed about coming into every episode. Normally, I would just like, I would try to, as much as humanly possible, try to catch every original taping of this show, and I would try to go out of my way to like, try to catch the first run. Like, today, like, I could have cared less. Like, I just went in and I was like, oh, okay, I'll just kind of catch it whenever. I'll just recatch it in the Hulu replays, because I just, like, to me, I haven't been jazzed about this season. Like, to me, it's just like, meh, whatever. So with that said, that's just how I feel about this season so far. But we end up having Chrissy Metz on this guest appearance, guest star, whichever thing, for this episode. I would honestly say that her guesses kind of feel much more of a rational guess than normal people. A lot of times people would just kind of put these like up in the air guesses that honestly don't really have really rational sense, or really it's a lot of times just going like, well, like, because this person is my friend, I guess I should just say who they are on the show so they can get to some kind of like, hey, remember when this person was relevant? Because they're on the show, because I'm going to guess them, and so on and so forth. Uh, to just throw in a guess of a character that they want to try to like really plug or something like that. But anyways, Going on into this episode, we end up having the Yeti singing It Takes Two. Funny enough, when we had the clue package, we end up having, I think Donnie Wahlberg is asking every single one of these mascotted characters questions. Because if you kind of hear, like, because I've been watching nonstop the show Blue Bloods, and so reasonably, when I had the guest person asking people questions, immediately when this person was talking, I'm like, is that Donnie Wahlberg? And then I was like, immediately, I'm like, yeah, because I've heard him enough on Blue Bloods to realize that that's Donnie Wahlberg. So I'm like, oh, hey, that's great that he was a part of this show in some kind of capacity. A lot of people are probably thinking that Donnie Wahlberg is the Rooster. A lot of people are thinking that Joel McHale is the Rooster, and so on and so forth. Some people are also thinking any number of things of who the Rooster actually is. More than likely, it probably is some person that is just going to try and plug away their show or whatever is going on. So I'm assuming it could quite possibly be the guy who is the host in The Masked Dancer, or some other person that could promote their show, ba 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 ba, and so on and so forth. So Omarion and Trey Songz are honestly my guesses. Christy had mentioned about Trey Songz, and I'm like, well, yeah, like I actually remember this guy. A lot of people might not be familiar with Trey Songz because it's been a while. Trey Songz' most popular song was the song "Say Ah." Say ah, it's your birthday, da 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 da. Yeah, it's like we have it to where like he ended up doing like a lot of like champagne and champagne songs. Like he ended up singing a song called Bottoms Up and Say Ah were like his two, I think, big hits, and then eventually he kind of just uh fizzled out after a certain point, sadly enough. But I think he still is doing music. It's just he's not, sadly, as relevant as he originally was when he originally came out. Say Ah was a really great song. But sadly enough. Omarion was also my other guest, and I've already explained that to the Heavens B2K and all kinds of things. More than likely, I'm assessing that this could quite possibly be that person, and so on and so forth. So, reasonably, with that said, I honestly no longer think that it's Justin Bieber anymore, just because that guess was really never really a true guess. It was just me going like, meh, like why not? Like how about it just be Justin Bieber? And then more than likely when this person gets revealed as Justin Bieber, and I'm just like, well, I didn't like I know that was a guess before. Oh gee golly. Uh, but anyways, letting you also know via mascotted name who had gone home tonight. So the RoboPine had been the one who had gone home, and so reasonably, yeah, we are going to see by the end of the episode who that actually is, but I will let you know via mascotted name that the RoboPine had gone home. And so with that said, we're eventually going to get to the guess of RoboPine and see if within time if I was correct. So let's move on. Speaking of which, I didn't realize this came up so soon because I don't remember the order of the show. Because after, like, to me, like, this episode was just kind of, like, I was just kind of going into here and I was just like, like, yeah, just watch another episode of this. It's just, like, we end up having RoboPine who had some kind of roller coaster thing in the background of his clue package. There were these clues of which that didn't quite make sense to me, that this person was quite possibly an actor of sorts. So we end up having RoboPine singing Water Runs Dry by Boyz II Men. And I can honestly say that I honestly felt there was no effort put into this song. There was honestly no true effort whatsoever honestly put into the song. It was a bunch of like that's the whole entire like thing. Like yeah, we did have it to where like to where RoboPine was really at some point giving us some lyrics, but a lot of it was ha 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 ha. That's me singing, everybody. Boys to men, hiya, through a bulk of the song, and that's talent for you. Man, if I could just go out there and I could have just been like, hiya. Immediately when you have the clue package and you sadly have to mention, and this is horrible, but it always bizarrely happens. I don't get why, especially in this season. Immediately that's when somebody usually gets voted off. We have in the clue package that RoboPine had told us that he had lost somebody, and I'm immediately like, oh my god, this is Orca all over again, because Orca had mentioned that he had lost his father, and so we have it to where RoboPine had mentioned that he had lost somebody, and I was like, oh no, he's gonna get voted off. He's gonna get voted off, sadly. So nobody tell any sad story of any whatever, because immediately you're gonna just get voted off. Plus, also like RoboPine didn't help with the performance of him giving the I'm boys to men now. I'm boys to men, y'all. Well, okay, sure, whatever you want to say, that you're a boy to be men, and so on and so forth. So with that said, let's see if I'm correct by the end of this episode. We'll see if it could be Tyrese. Moving on. So we had the Piglet Man, the Piglet guy, who had given us a a performance of Against All Odds by Phil Collins, which immediately I'm like, well, wasn't this song Against All Odds in the movie American Psycho with with Christian Bale? Like immediately that's just like what pops in there. But that's not the best movie as a family friendly film to have this song. But immediately when this song came on, I was like is this a song from American Psycho? I'm like, yeah, I think it is. But anyways, it's a Christian Bale movie. I wouldn't suggest people to go out of the way to see it, especially if this is a family show. But really, any of this clue package didn't really cement to me any more so that this is just Nick Lachey or anybody else other than Nick Lachey. Really, finally, for I don't know how long now, finally, some of the judges cemented that, you know what, this could actually be Nick Lachey. And I'm like, wow. How long did it take them? How many episodes did that come to? They were all like guessing like boy banders, and good grief. Do they always go with the guys from Backstreet Boys every single time? The guy who is Brian from Backstreet Boys, they say his name every single time there is a boy band member. Like they have to go through the entire roster of Backstreet Boys whenever there is a boy bander person in this show. It's ridiculous. Like they always go with Backstreet Boys more so than anybody else. Like they never say anybody from NSYNC. They never say anybody from so and so places. They always go into like, yeah, I think it's Brian or Howie or Nick or AJ or Kevin or Clive or Benjamin or Any of those other people that are from the Backstreet Boys. I just insulted probably a lot of people who probably just watched it. Like, there's only 5 of them, you dope. You know exactly who are the Backstreet Boys. You know every single band member there are. Well, yeah, because most of the time they come up on their show, and eventually you'll be able to easily figure out who they all are because of how they sound, and so on and so forth, because I know everything. So, with that said, we end up having Nick Lachey singing "Against All Odds" and "Whoopity Doopity." I didn't care for this performance. If anything, I actually liked the Pretender Foo Fighters song. I think that was probably the most interesting song out of this whole Piglet performance. Other than that, like I'm just kind of waiting for uh, something really interesting to come out of this character because I think he's just consistently playing it safe a lot for the most point. Uh, but yeah, like the Pretender song was probably the best one out of Piglet, but other than that, it's just I could care less. So with that said, let's move on. So the Black Swan, we end up having it to where they are to tell us that it seems that the Black Swan has been a legitimate singer in the past. So I'm like, well, I'm just gonna like get rid of the whole guess of Vanessa Hutchins, even though you could say it's like, well, High School Musical, technically that was an album, right? And technically that did some kind of sales, correct? Yeah, but I don't know. I think I'm just going to end up having to forcibly go with JoJo or probably someone else eventually. If people do have a good guess of the Black Swan, hopefully before the time of which that the Black Swan actually gets uh, eliminated, which I'm assuming she's probably going to make it into the finals. I'm assessing and or assuming. Uh, with that said, we end up having the Black Swan performing a Stevie Wonder song, which I was honestly just like, do I do? No, I do not do the do that you do. Mountain Dew? I really didn't care for this performance. I think immediately we end up having Black Swan just going like, well, hey, I've had really great performances like plenty of weeks before, so I should just be safe this week because people just like me. And so I should just be fine. I just didn't care for this performance. I just didn't care for the otherwise. Like to me, I don't think that this really clue package is really cementing or bringing it home of who this person actually is. Like, I cannot, for the life of me, quite figure out how the clue packages relate to any number of things. Oh, by the way, let's taper back for a second here. So, speaking of clue packages, Piglet. So, if anything, there was the clue doodly doo, diddly doodly, the rooster guy thing, who had mentioned that that this Piglet character, who I'm assessing is Nick Lachey. I'll pause here for a second. We end up having this character who is this Piglet character who had supposedly been tossing back some footballs with a man named Joe Montana. And so immediately I'm like, well, that's easy to just Google. So Nick Lachey had been a part of MTV's Rockin' Jockin' whatever football thing, and evidently or Joe Montana, uh, Joe Montana. That's not Joe Montana. Uh, God, what is his name? I'm gonna have to pause here for a second. Dan Marino. I know I searched it. I know I looked it up. Dan Marino. So MTV's Rockin' Jock, whichever that football event that they had celebrities do football-y things, whichever. Joe Montana and Dan Marino. Who cares? Football character throws to celebrity, and guess what? That was still Nick Lachey. Wow. I butchered that whole clue package, but at least I saved it in the end. At least I researched and looked it up a second time around to just guarantee that. But I got at least the event quite possibly technically right. Um, so Nick Lachey is basically even much more cemented as this character if it was any much more of a clue than it was ever before. And plus, now that clue package cemented that Nick Lachey had been throwing footballs with Dan Marino. Saying that correctly now, because football characters, whichever, it's like he was thrown by a quarterback character that heaven forbid that I remember the name of. So with that said, back to Black Swan. So Black Swan, there was no real clue package to me to really guess JoJo quicker. We really have it to where I think a lot of the guesses for this character is kind of all over the place. I would have even to have assessed at some point that maybe the Black Swan could honestly have been Brandy at some point, the artist known as Brandy. But with that said, probably could be JoJo. But with that said, yeah, there isn't much else of me guessing who any of this is. So let's move on. So we end up having. Okay. I was trying to cement where exactly that we had stopped at some point. So the Russian dolls, I've kind of much more consented that with especially all this gosh darn confusion of the numbers of who actually these Russian dolls are, they keep switching every single episode. Like at first it's 3, then it's like 2 for some episodes, and what is going on? I am getting so flippin' confused. Like I think like we end up having it to where these characters are consistently switching off, so it's not the same character every single week. It's really annoying. But with that said, even with just 2 people consistently in this group, every single week they do really good performances for the most point. We end up having the Russian dolls performing a song called Shallow, and reasonably, I would just say, like, hands down, this is the best performance that I think that this show has ever had. No, I honestly think that it's just a good song that they had performed, but reasonably, I just don't think it's better than any other thing that has happened within the season. I just think that it's meh, like to me. Funny enough that they would mention that this song was done by Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. I'm like, okay, so you have to mention the more recent, like the Star is Born, like song, so that way you can slap words like Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper onto your episode to feel more relevant, more current, more whatever. I honestly think that that's kind of garbage, but it is what it is with this show. With that said, best performance ever in the show. This beats out like every single song that is ever performed in our lives. And so, like, this has got to be hands down the best performance that I've ever seen. No, it's not. Like, it's might as well just be because there's nothing else really that I'm just so like I can understand where some of them said it's like, well, dude, obviously Russian dolls are going into the finale. Obviously, they're going to get really far within the show. But that will all depend on what they sing within the following weeks. Because more than likely, they'll probably try to sing some clunkety song so that way they won't actually win this show. Because heaven forbid. Because reasonably, I just think that there are obvious people that aren't like going to obviously win this show, and I don't think that the Russian Dolls are actually going to do that. I don't think that Piglet is going to win this show either. I don't think that like it's probably either up to the Black Swan or probably the Yeti. And I think those are the only two real people I can consent right now could be the winners of this season. So, Hanson, I know that I've probably said Jonas Brothers in previous episodes, but honestly, I feel that uh, the they had sang the song "Shallow" within this episode, and immediately I'm like, I don't think that one of the people singing this song like sound like a Jonas brother. And so immediately I'm like, well, probably because it's a Hanson brother. And so reasonably, the Hansons is who I have went with, and let's see if that's Hanson by the end of the show. If you guys have a different guess than I do, maybe you're gonna guess a whole entire Partridge family of sorts. Go ahead. Even though some of those members of the Partridge family are longer alive. Anyways, but it is what it is. So Hanson Bros, sure, why not? Let's move on. So we have the Chameleon, who had performed yet another just one of those great just bust of rhymes. Put your hands where your eyes can see. And immediately I'm like, in all brutal honesty, this is kind of getting old. Chameleon is kind of getting old on me. Like, in all actuality, it seems that Chameleon's performance was a lot more challenging than the of the Robopine, and I could appreciate for Chameleon consistently doing these really challenging songs. I do like that, but to me, I'm just like, we're just kind of having this character just consistently doing this one thing, and that is it. Like, I do not see this character via these performances making it into the finale and winning. If he does, I would be utterly shocked and surprised, and I could not justify the Chameleon winning the show. So, reasonably, I hope that he pulls just something out of the woodwork to just bust it out and Busta Rhymes it out and just beat everybody and annihilate everybody. But reasonably, I just don't care for this character. Because in all actuality, he is not putting on a I am going to win this season performance at all through this yet. And we end up having it to where I feel like this character is consistently in the bottom two. So, Chameleon, I had assumed, is still Wiz Khalifa. I don't have any guesses of clue packages that help me out via either guessing Joe Montana or Dan Marino. God, that was stupid. Yeah, they're all football players. Who cares? But so, with that said, with Wiz as this pick, that ends up ending our guesses for this episode. Joe Montana. F it, man. Like, I messed things up. Mistakes happen, and I could have went back, redone the entire review, and said that correctly, but I still probably would have said it incorrectly regardless. And I probably would have gotten something else wrong along the way. So, Joe Montana. So, the guy from Ace Ventura Pet Detective. That guy who was the quarterback in that movie. That guy. At least I know that. At least. I did. Really. Anyways, so now is about that time to otherwise spoil who the RoboPine was. By this episode, you will know if I am correct or incorrect, because I technically usually probably am, because this time around it's about spoiler time. It's about that time again to figure out who the RoboPine was, because we desperately needed to know who the RoboPine was, because we needed to figure out who the la 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 singer was. So, let's go into spoilers. If you don't want to know who the RoboPine is, check this out on Hulu. I ended up not watching the original air because I just didn't care, and plus also I would have rather just tried to have actually slept during that time instead of actually watch the original taping, because I honestly am just not jazzed about this season. Plus also, like I've been doing some stuff and or things that have kind of shifted my sleep schedule, so I decided to sleep rather than watch the original airing of the show, because I kind of could have figured out who was going home anyways, because the show is predictable, but also I could have predicted that I would probably have guessed correct at this point in time within the show. So, let's go into spoilers right now. Tyrese Gibson is the RoboPine, Grammy-nominated singer, songwriter, and actor, because the water has run dry on... Yeah, so we end up having Tyrese Gibson, who doesn't even sing the song of which that he was eliminated by. He ended up singing a completely different song. Did Tyrese Gibson not even prep for the song of which that he was singing? Or did he just have to just add in his la la la? Because reasonably there was just nothing lyric-wise in that song. So why choose that song to get eliminated by? So reasonably, I would say, you know what? There were some good performances done by RoboPine, justifiably. Tyrese Gibson also showed himself upon some video somewhere of him wearing the Masked Singer hoodie, so that kind of revealed that he would be on this season. And so reasonably that kind of took the wind out of my sails to just like, well, Tyrese Gibson has to be in this show somehow. And so immediately I would just have figured out, well, I've heard Tyrese before, and I know his singing because I've heard of his singing plenty enough times to know how he sounds. We really have it to where we end up finding out that Tyrese had fibbed, had lied, had tried to, as much as humanly possible, make up things and become a character for this show, so that way people would be guessing even harder who the RoboPine even is. So, let's get this straight. So, if the guesses weren't hard enough to figure out who this character was, now we have Tyrese himself giving us misleading clues to help us not even understand who the heck that this person is. And so I was like, well, like, I guess you can just really appreciate him going out of his way to try to keep people guessing. And how he was trying to figure out how he could thwart himself for the longest amount of time, and allow him to be able to be on the show for the longest amount of time. It's kind of interesting whenever we get to every single time we finally unsheath these people and unmask them, how a lot of times they always mention it's like, well, hey man, like I did it for my kids, or I did it for the people, or I did it for whoever, or I did it for the man upstairs, or I did it for the man downstairs, or I did it for the guy that was in the side of the stairs just going, man, I'm exhausted. And so that was a joke, people. That was a joke. So Tyrese, yeah, a unmasking person. How long has this even been? 34 minutes? We need to get out of here. So with that said, yeah, Tyrese Gibson, yeah, the RoboPine character. Okay, so we're going to skip right to season review. Winning season, hooray. Yeah, that's all that I have to say. I'm just unenthused about the season. I can't wait till it to honestly just be over with. Like I can't wait till it just is a season finale. Could they honestly just eliminate like could they honestly just eliminate like 2 to 3 people just to like minimize this down? I honestly just want this season, like how can we wrap this up quicker? Because I just honestly just I'm not really enthused. I'm not really excited about these episodes. I just want this season to be brutally and honestly over. To eventually get into a much more different set of people coming in. Because this season, right out of the get go, just wasn't that. It was just kind of like scraping at the bottom of the barrel to whoever that they can just find to get on this show, I think. Hence why you don't have as massive amount of people being on the show as seasons previous. Yeah, there are good quality celebrities here. A lot of people that are really well known and very popular in their respective whichever. Uh, but yeah, I just these performances were just this season. So with that said, it's time to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.